I flew 17 hours straight from Tokyo to Boston to attend my grandfather's funeral. I was completely exhausted. My eyes were swollen and red from crying. All I wanted to do was stand by his casket and say goodbye to the only person in my family who actually loved me. But when I walked up to the heavy wooden doors of the church, my parents didn't even let me inside. My mother, Susan, looked me up and down with absolute disgust, like I was some homeless stranger standing on her property. She crossed her arms and said in a freezing cold voice, "What are you doing here? You haven't bothered to call or visit this family in 5 years. Are you just here to sniff around for his money?" Before I could even answer, my father grabbed my arm and physically shoved me away from the entrance. "You don't belong here," he spat. "You are not a part of this family. Get off the property before I call security." And my little sister? Sophia? She was standing a few feet away in a custom black designer gown, watching the whole thing with a satisfied, mocking smirk on her face. I didn't argue with them. I didn't scream or make a scene. I didn't even shed another tear. I just took one last, long look at the church doors, took a deep breath, and quietly walked away. I thought that would be the absolute last time I ever saw or spoke to those people. But exactly 3 days later, I was sitting in my tiny hotel room, drinking coffee and packing my bags to fly back to Japan, when my phone rang. The caller ID flashed on the screen. It was my mother. The exact same woman who had physically thrown me out of a graveyard 3 days ago was suddenly calling me. I picked up the phone. "Hello," I said, my voice completely flat. When my mother spoke, all of her usual arrogance was completely gone. Instead, there was a strange, desperate, trembling panic in her voice. "Elena," she swallowed hard. "Do you have some time today? We really need you to come to the lawyer's office." I slowly placed my coffee mug on the table. "Why? You made it perfectly clear 3 days ago that I am not a part of your family." "Look, Elena, emotions were running high that day," my mother said quickly, her voice cracking. "The family lawyer came to the house this morning to read your grandfather's will. And Grandpa left his entire $12 million estate and trust fund, entirely to you. You are the sole beneficiary." I froze. $12 million? My mother's voice dropped into a pathetic, begging whisper. "The lawyer said that absolutely none of the accounts can be unlocked or distributed until you come into the office and physically sign the release papers. We really need your signature, Elena. Please, just come down here." All the pain, the humiliation, and the years of emotional abuse I had suffered from them suddenly went completely quiet inside my chest. A slow, ice-cold smile crept across my face. I looked at the speaker of my phone and said in a perfectly calm, chilling voice, "But you said it yourselves. I'm not a part of the family." "Elena, wait, please listen to," my mother pleaded. But before she could finish her sentence, I hung up the phone. And from that exact second, their absolute worst nightmare began. Today, I am going to tell you exactly what happened next. I am going to tell you a story about how I didn't scream, I didn't fight, and I didn't plan some crazy, elaborate revenge. I just sat back and let their own greed burn their perfect lives to the ground. If you have ever been betrayed or treated like garbage by the people who were supposed to love you, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. Your support gives me the courage to share this story with the world. My name is Elena Wright. I am 28 years old. 5 years ago, I packed a single suitcase and moved across the world to Japan. I left my family, my city, and my past behind. Because in my entire life, I only had one true family member, my grandfather, William Wright. My grandfather was a self-made real estate developer. He built a massive empire from absolutely nothing. But my father? He was the exact opposite. He had never worked an honest day in his life. He just lived off my grandfather's wealth, pretending to be a successful businessman. And my mother? She was a raging narcissist who cared more about country club memberships and designer handbags than her own children. Well, to be fair, she cared about one of her children, the golden child, my younger sister, Sophia. Sophia was gorgeous, manipulative, and incredibly spoiled. While I was working 2 part-time jobs just to pay for my college textbooks, my parents were buying Sophia a brand new Range Rover for her birthday. They constantly told me, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" The day I realized I would never be enough for them was the day I left for Japan. I got an entry-level job at an IT firm and started building a quiet, peaceful life for myself. Over the last 5 years, I didn't speak to my parents once. My only connection to home was my weekly Skype calls with my grandfather. He used to tell me, "Elena, you are my only true successor, because you actually understand the value of hard work." I didn't fully understand what he meant by that until last week, when my grandfather's private nurse called to tell me he had passed away from a sudden heart attack. I literally collapsed onto the floor. I maxed out my credit cards, booked an emergency flight, and rushed back to Boston. All I wanted was to say a proper goodbye, but they denied me even that. They treated me like a stray dog. And now, just 3 days later, those exact same people were begging me for a simple signature. I put my phone on silent and tossed it onto the hotel bed. I wasn't going to the lawyer's office. I wasn't going to sign a single piece of paper. My parents probably thought I would eventually cave in and sign the documents out of guilt. But they had absolutely no idea that without that $12 million being unlocked, their entire fake, luxurious lifestyle was about to violently collapse like a house of cards. And I was going to sit right here, in my hotel room, and listen to the whole thing crash to the ground. I sat on the edge of the plush hotel bed, the glow from my laptop screen casting a harsh light over the darkened room. With a calm, steady hand, I opened the airline website and canceled my flight back to Japan. I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. The fun was just getting started. I wanted to see exactly how long their perfect lives would hold up without my grandfather's monthly lifeline. It wasn't about being cruel. It was about watching the truth finally catch up to them. You might be wondering how a family living in a multi-million-dollar mansion, driving luxury cars, and sipping champagne at the exclusive local country club could be so terrified by a frozen bank account. But in the world of the wealthy elite, or at least those pretending to be, the reality is often much darker and more fragile than it appears on Instagram. My parents were masters of the American dream facade. From the outside, the Bennett family was the picture of suburban success. But behind closed doors, their entire life was a fragile house of cards, held together by nothing but my grandfather's checks. They didn't own that massive mansion outright. It was sitting under a massive, suffocating mortgage. Sophia's lifestyle, the designer clothes, the private parties, the trips to Europe, was funded by high-interest credit cards with limits that would make your head spin. My father's country club membership, his luxury car lease, the landscapers, the housekeepers. It was all paid for by a direct deposit that hit their bank account on the first of every month. And that deposit came from one place, Grandfather William's trust. Now that he was gone, and I, the sole heir, refused to sign the release papers, that direct deposit had stopped. The silence from their side lasted for exactly 48 hours. Then, the panic began. It started on Friday morning. My phone, which I had kept on silent, began vibrating against the nightstand. I watched the notifications pile up like a ticker tape of their desperation. At 10 a.m., a text from my father popped up. "Elena, stop acting like a child. This isn't a game. Get to the lawyer's office by noon. This is a legal matter." I didn't reply. I just sipped my coffee and stared out the window at the Boston skyline. The power felt exhilarating. For 5 years, I had been the one waiting for their calls, the one begging for their approval, the one crying in the dark. Now, the roles were reversed. At 2 p.m., a long, rambling voicemail from my mother appeared. "Elena, are you ignoring us? Do you have any idea what you're doing? Because you're holding up the release of the trust." Sophia's credit card was declined at the boutique today. She was humiliated in front of her friends. "Do you want to destroy your own sister? Pick up the phone!" I listened to the voicemail, deleted it, and went back to reading my book. I wasn't angry anymore. I was strangely calm. I realized then that they didn't actually care about me. They didn't care that I had been thrown out of a graveyard. They only cared about their social status and their ability to keep spending money they didn't earn. By 8 p.m., the tone of their messages had shifted from arrogant orders to pure, raw fear. My father's text was shorter, punchier. "Elena, please. The mortgage company just sent a final notice. If the payment doesn't clear by Monday, they are going to hit us with massive penalty fees. Pick up the phone. We need to talk." I closed my laptop and went to sleep. I knew exactly what was happening. Every missed payment, every declined transaction, every panicked phone call from their bank. It was a heavy hammer blow to their ego, and I was going to let every single one of those blows land. The next morning, Saturday, I decided to grab breakfast in the hotel lobby. I was halfway through my omelet when I heard a loud, frantic commotion coming from the front entrance. I looked up, and my spoon froze midair. Walking into the lobby with hurried, panicked strides were 3 people: my father, my mother, and Sophia. They had somehow tracked my hotel stay through my credit card records, the only card I had used to book the room. They looked absolutely nothing like the polished, untouchable family I had seen at the church 3 days ago. My mother's face was pale and void of any makeup. Her hair, usually perfectly coiffed, was messy. My father looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His suit was wrinkled, and his eyes were bloodshot. And Sophia? She wasn't wearing designer gear. She was wearing a baggy sweatshirt and leggings, looking like she had just rolled out of bed to go to a crime scene. They spotted me near the back of the lobby. My mother let out a sharp gasp and literally sprinted toward my table. She grabbed my hand, squeezing it so hard her nails dug into my skin. "Elena! Thank God you're here. We've been calling you for days. You have to come with us. Right now." I very slowly, very deliberately, pulled my hand away from hers and wiped it with a napkin. "I told you not to disturb me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but cold enough to make her stop in her tracks. My father, usually the man who treated me like an employee rather than a daughter, stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and desperation. "This isn't a joke, Elena! This is about the future of this family. If you don't sign those papers, the bank is going to start the foreclosure process on the mansion. Do you want to see your own parents on the street?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "You already put me on the street 5 years ago, Dad. Did you think I'd just forget that?" Sophia, who had been standing behind them, suddenly lunged forward. She burst into tears. The fake, performative kind I had known my entire life. "Sister, please!" she cried, loud enough that a few people at nearby tables started looking over. "My car lease payment bounced yesterday. The dealership called and said if I don't pay by tomorrow, they're sending a tow truck to take it away. My friends are going to see it. It's going to be the biggest scandal of my life. Please, just sign the papers so we can get access to the funds." I looked at my family, my parents and my sister. They were standing in the middle of a luxury hotel lobby, begging. The irony was beautiful. "Friends finding out is the biggest scandal of your life?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you're worried about?" Sophia froze, blinking at me through her fake tears. I stood up, smoothed out my jacket, and looked at each of them. "You think this is about money? You think if I just sign the paper, everything goes back to normal. But you're missing the point. You didn't come here to apologize. You didn't come here because you missed me. You came here because your fake life is finally collapsing, and you're terrified of losing the lifestyle that grandfather paid for." My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. "You ungrateful brat! We gave you everything! You owe us!" "I owe you nothing," I said, my voice cutting through the lobby like a knife. "I already signed the papers. I signed them the moment I walked out of that church 3 days ago. I signed them when I decided I would never ask you for another cent as long as I live." I picked up my purse and walked toward the elevator. "Elena, wait!" my mother screamed. "You can't do this! You're ruining us! I didn't stop. I didn't turn around." I knew that without my signature, the bank wouldn't unlock a single cent of the trust. By Monday, their credit scores would be decimated. By the end of the week, they'd be drowning in foreclosure notices. They were standing on the edge of a cliff, and they were desperately trying to pull me down with them. But I had already stepped back. And as the elevator doors closed, cutting off the sound of my sister's hysterical sobbing, I felt a strange, terrifying calm. The storm was just beginning, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the rain. When the glass doors of the hotel elevator closed, shutting out the sound of Sophia's hysterical sobbing, I felt a profound sense of silence settle over me. I went back to my room, locked the door, and fell backward onto the plush mattress. For the first time in 5 years, the heavy, suffocating weight I had been carrying in my chest felt completely gone. I knew that if I had caved in and signed those release papers, they would have survived. They would have given me a fake, forced, "Thank you," taken the money, and immediately gone back to treating me like I didn't exist. They would have thrown me right back into the dark. But I was no longer the naive, emotionally starved girl who would set herself on fire just to keep them warm. Saturday and Sunday passed in absolute silence. My phone didn't ring. There were no more text messages or voicemails from my parents or Sophia. I knew exactly what they were doing. They were playing a psychological game, hoping that the silent treatment would make me feel guilty enough to come crawling back to them with my signature. It was the same toxic manipulation tactic they had used on me since I was a child. But they failed to realize one crucial detail. The clock was ticking, and time was not on their side. Finally, Monday morning arrived. In the financial world, Monday morning isn't just the start of the week. It is the day of reckoning. The weekend grace period is over. The banks open their doors, and the automated collection systems officially go online. I woke up at 8 a.m., poured myself a cup of hotel coffee, and stood by the window. I wanted to see exactly how a multi-million-dollar house of cards collapses in real time. I rented an inconspicuous gray sedan and drove out to the wealthy, pristine suburbs of Boston where my parents lived. I parked my car under a large oak tree 2 blocks down the street. From my vantage point, I had a perfect, unobstructed view of their massive driveway. It was exactly 9:30 a.m. Suddenly, the quiet, peaceful atmosphere of the neighborhood was shattered by the loud, heavy rumble of a diesel engine. A massive, bright yellow flatbed tow truck turned the corner and rolled slowly down the street. A rush of adrenaline hit my chest. I knew exactly what was about to happen. The tow truck backed right into my parents' driveway, stopping inches away from Sophia's pristine, white Range Rover. 2 burly men in high V vests hopped out of the truck, holding clipboards. Without hesitating, they started hooking heavy steel chains to the front axles of the luxury SUV. Just as the chains clanked together, the massive oak front doors of the mansion violently swung open. Sophia came sprinting out of the house. She was still wearing her silk pajamas, her hair a frizzy, tangled mess. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, waving her arms frantically as she ran down the driveway. "Excuse me! Hey! What the hell are you doing? Do not touch my car!" Her voice was shrill and panicked. One of the repo men didn't even flinch. He calmly held up a piece of paper. "Ma'am, the lease payments on this vehicle are 3 months past due. The primary card on file was declined on Friday. The dealership ordered an immediate repossession." Sophia looked like she was going to pass out. "I can pay you! I have the money! Please, you can't take this! My friends live on this street. Do you know who my father is?" Right on cue, my father, Richard Bennett, stormed out of the house. He was wearing a plush bathrobe, his face flushed red with absolute fury. He marched down the driveway, pointing a threatening finger at the workers. "You have a lot of nerve coming onto my property!" my father roared. "Unhook that vehicle right now, or I am calling the police and having you arrested for trespassing." The repo man just let out a dry, tired laugh. "Please, call the cops, sir. Saves me the trouble. Because legally, this vehicle belongs to the bank now. And if you interfere with a lawful repossession, the police will be putting you in handcuffs, not me." My father's face instantly deflated. The arrogant, untouchable aura he had worn his entire life crumbled into dust in a matter of seconds. He lowered his hand and took a slow, defeated step backward. Sophia was sobbing hysterically, shaking my father's arm. "Dad, do something! They're taking my car! Dad, please!" But my father did nothing. He just stood there in his bathrobe, completely powerless. The tow truck's hydraulic winch whirred to life, and Sophia's expensive Range Rover was dragged onto the flatbed. And you want to know the absolute best part? All around them, the wealthy neighbors, the same people my parents played golf with at the country club, were parting their living room blinds. People walking their golden retrievers had stopped on the sidewalks to watch. The Bennett's fake, high society status was being publicly slaughtered for the entire neighborhood to see. I sat in my rental car and watched the whole thing. I didn't smile. I didn't laugh. I just put the car in drive and quietly headed back toward the city. But my dramatic Monday wasn't over yet. Around 1 p.m., my cell phone rang. It was an unknown local number. I answered it. "Hello? Is this Elena right?" A deep, raspy, and incredibly authoritative voice asked. "Yes, it is. Who is this?" "My name is Thomas Sterling. I am the senior partner at Sterling & Vance. More importantly, I am your late grandfather's personal attorney and the true executor of his estate." I frowned, completely confused. "Mr. Sterling? But my mother said another lawyer from your firm handled the will on Friday." Mr. Sterling let out a heavy sigh. "Yes, that was the theatrical performance we put on for your parents' benefit. But your grandfather gave me very strict, confidential instructions before he passed. I was ordered to meet with you alone, in absolute secrecy. Your parents cannot know we are speaking." A chill ran down my arms. "Why?" "Because your grandfather didn't just leave you $12 million, Elena. He left something hidden inside that will, something your parents don't know about yet. Can you meet me at the Blue Ribbon Coffee Shop downtown at 3 p.m.? I didn't hesitate. "I'll be there." At exactly 3 p.m., I walked into the quiet, dimly lit coffee shop. Mr. Sterling was sitting at a corner booth. He was an older man with sharp, intelligent eyes. Resting on the table in front of him was a black leather briefcase. I sat down across from him. Without any small talk, he popped the latches of the briefcase, pulled out a thick red folder, and slid it across the table toward me. "What is this?" I asked, staring at the file. "This, Elena, is your grandfather's masterstroke," Mr. Sterling said, a slight, knowing smile on his face. "Your grandfather was a brilliant man. He knew perfectly well that your parents were living a lie. He knew your father had secretly tripled the mortgage on that mansion and was drowning in high-interest credit card debt." I stared at him in shock. "Grandpa knew all of that? He knew everything," Sterling nodded. "And more importantly, he knew exactly how cruelly they treated you. That is why, inside the final trust documents, he added a very specific, ironclad condition. Clause 7B, Mr. Sterling leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low whisper. "Because you are now the sole beneficiary of a $12 million trust, you have incredible financial leverage. Clause 7B gives you the legal authority and the capital to purchase your parents' defaulted debts directly from their creditors." I furrowed my brows, trying to process the legal jargon. "Purchasing their debt? What does that mean?" "It means, Elena," he said smoothly, "that when the bank officially forecloses on their mansion and calls in their massive credit card debts, you can use the trust money to buy those debts. You buy the mortgage. You buy the collections." My heart stopped beating for a second. The gravity of his words hit me like a freight train. "And if I buy their debt," I whispered, "what happens then?" Mr. Sterling's smile widened into something dangerously sharp. "Then, Elena, legally, they no longer owe the banks. They will owe you. You will become their sole creditor. You will literally hold the deed to the roof over their heads. You could let them live there rent-free if you choose. Or, with a single phone call, you could legally evict them and throw them out onto the street. You will own them." I sat completely frozen in the booth. My grandfather didn't just leave me money. He left me a weapon. A weapon so incredibly powerful that it gave me absolute control over the fate of the people who had destroyed my life. I opened the red folder. Inside were the debt transfer and acquisition papers already drawn up by the legal team. All they needed was my signature. Would I forgive them? Or would I drag them down into the exact same cold, unforgiving darkness they had thrown me into 5 years ago? I picked up the heavy silver pen Mr. Sterling offered me. A cold, ruthless smile finally broke across my face. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't hesitate. I pressed the tip of the heavy silver pen to the paper and signed my name on the dotted line. With that single signature, I didn't just unlock my grandfather's $12 million trust fund. I legally bought every single cent of my parents' suffocating debt. The mortgage on their massive suburban mansion, the maxed out credit cards, the unpaid personal loans. It all belonged to me now. I was no longer just the daughter they threw away. Legally, on paper, I was their master. Mr. Sterling carefully slid the signed documents back into his red folder and snapped his briefcase shut. He looked at me with a deep sense of respect in his eyes. "The transfer will be completed through the banking channels by tomorrow morning," he said quietly. "As of 9 a.m. tomorrow, you will hold the deed to the property. You have the right to initiate an immediate eviction notice, or you can demand full payment. How would you like to proceed, Miss Wright?" I looked out the coffee shop window at the busy Boston streets. "I don't want to use lawyers to deliver the news, Mr. Sterling," I said, a cold, dark satisfaction settling into my chest. "I want to deliver the eviction notice myself." Mr. Sterling nodded, understanding completely. "As you wish. The legal notice will be couriered to your hotel room tonight." The next morning, Tuesday, the sky over Boston was dark and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. I dressed in a sharp, tailored black suit. I wanted to look like the businesswoman my grandfather knew I could be, not the scared, rejected girl my parents remembered. I held the thick, legal eviction envelope in my hand. It felt heavier than it actually was. I drove my rental car back to the wealthy suburbs and parked right in my parents' driveway. Sophia's white Range Rover was gone. In its place was a glaring, empty patch of concrete. I walked up the stone steps and rang the doorbell. For a moment, there was no answer. I could hear hushed, panicked voices inside. They probably thought it was another repo man or a debt collector coming to seize their furniture. Finally, the heavy oak door creaked open just a few inches. My mother peered out, her eyes wide with fear. When she saw it was me, the fear instantly transformed into a look of absolute, arrogant relief. She pulled the door wide open. "Elena!" she gasped, grabbing her chest. "Oh, thank God. Did you finally come to your senses? Did you sign the release papers?" My father, hearing my name, came rushing out of the living room. He looked terrible, unshaven, his eyes dark with stress, but he forced a fake, authoritative smile onto his face. "I told you she'd come around, Susan," my father said, adjusting his collar, trying to regain his position of power. "You made the right choice, Elena. Now, tell the lawyers to wire the funds immediately. The bank has been hounding us all morning." Sophia appeared at the top of the grand staircase, looking down at me with her usual bratty glare. "It's about time. You cost me my car, Elena. You owe me a new one." I stood on the front porch, looking at the three of them. They hadn't learned a single thing. Even when they were drowning, even when they were stripped of their luxury, they still believed the world owed them everything. They still thought they owned me. I didn't smile. I didn't yell. I just looked at my mother and extended my hand, offering her the thick manila envelope. "What is this?" my mother asked, her fake smile faltering as she took the envelope. "Are these the bank confirmation papers?" "You could say that," I replied, my voice completely flat. My father ripped the envelope out of her hands and tore it open. He pulled out the stack of legal documents. I watched his eyes scan the first page. At first, he looked confused. His brow furrowed as he read the complex legal jargon. Then, his eyes hit the bold print halfway down the page. I watched the exact moment my father's heart stopped. The color vanished from his face so fast he looked like a corpse. His hands began to shake violently, making the papers rustle loudly in the quiet hallway. "Richard?" my mother asked, her voice trembling with sudden panic. "Richard, what does it say? Are the funds released?" My father slowly looked up from the papers. He stared at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of absolute terror and disbelief. "You," he whispered, his voice cracking. "You bought our debt? You bought the mortgage?" "What?" my mother shrieked, snatching the papers from his shaking hands. "What does that mean?" Sophia demanded, running down the stairs. "Dad, what does she mean she bought the debt?" I took a slow, calculated step inside their house, forcing them to step back. "It means," I said, my voice echoing off the high ceilings of their grand foyer, "that you no longer owe the bank $3 million, Dad. You owe it to me. I am the sole owner of this property. I own the roof over your head. I own the grass you are standing on." My mother dropped the papers onto the hardwood floor. She put her hands over her mouth, backing away from me as if I was holding a loaded gun. "Elena," my father choked out, his arrogance completely shattered. "You can't do this. This is our home. We built this life." "You didn't build anything," I snapped, my voice finally rising, cutting through the air like a whip. "Grandpa built this. You just sat around and leeched off his hard work while treating me like garbage because I refused to be a parasite like you." Sophia stared at me, her bratty attitude completely erased by genuine fear. "What? What are you going to do to us?" I looked at my little sister, then at my parents, the mighty Bennett family, reduced to shivering, terrified messes in their own hallway. I reached down, picked up the front page of the legal document from the floor, and handed it directly to my father. "That is a legal 30-day eviction notice," I said, my tone dropping back to a freezing, emotionless whisper. "You have exactly 1 month to pack your bags and vacate my property. If you are still inside this house at 8 a.m. on the 31st day, I will have the sheriff forcibly remove you for trespassing." "No!" my mother screamed, falling to her knees on the floor. She grabbed the hem of my suit pants, sobbing uncontrollably. "Please, Elena, you can't put us on the street. Where will we go? We have no money. We have nothing." I looked down at the woman who had birthed me, the woman who had thrown me out of a graveyard just days ago. I gently stepped back, pulling my pants out of her grasp. "I guess you'll have to do what I did 5 years ago, Mom," I said coldly. "Figure it out." I turned around and walked out the front door. As I walked down the driveway toward my car, the sound of my mother's wailing and my father's desperate shouts faded behind me. The house of cards hadn't just collapsed. I had taken a match and burned it completely to the ground. But as I drove away, I knew the war wasn't entirely over. Desperate people do desperate things, and a man like my father, stripped of his pride and his wealth, was bound to make one last, dangerous mistake. Here is Chapter 5, focusing on the father's desperate and dangerous attempt to fight back, adding a gripping courtroom/legal drama element to the story. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange, terrifyingly quiet blur. I moved out of my hotel and into a high-end, short-term rental apartment in downtown Boston. I spent my days working remotely for my company in Japan, ignoring the dozens of desperate voicemails and emails flooding in from my mother and Sophia. They were begging, pleading. They promised they would change, that they would go to family therapy, that they loved me. It was pathetic, transparent manipulation, and it didn't move me an inch. But there was one person I hadn't heard from at all: my father. Richard Bennett was a man whose entire identity was tied to his perceived power and wealth. Being humiliated by his eldest daughter, being legally stripped of his home and his status. It was a psychological blow he couldn't swallow. I knew his silence didn't mean surrender. It meant he was plotting. My suspicions were confirmed on a cold Tuesday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen island, typing an email, when a sharp, authoritative knock echoed through my apartment. I opened the door to find a man in a cheap suit holding a thick manila envelope. He looked at my face, checked a clipboard, and shoved the envelope against my chest. "Elena Wright? You've been served," he said flatly, turning around and walking away before I could even process what was happening. I closed the door, my heart picking up a slightly faster rhythm. I ripped open the envelope and pulled out the legal documents inside. It was a court summons. My father had officially filed a lawsuit against me in the Massachusetts probate court. I read through the filing, and a dark, humorless laugh escaped my lips. He wasn't just contesting the eviction, he was contesting my grandfather's entire will. The lawsuit claimed that I had committed undue influence and elder abuse. My father's lawyers were arguing that my grandfather was not of sound mind when he drafted the trust, and that I had somehow manipulated a dying man into leaving me $12 million while disinheriting his loving family. It was a desperate, filthy lie. But more dangerously, he had filed for an emergency injunction to freeze the trust assets and halt the eviction process until the trial was concluded. If the judge granted the injunction, my parents could stay in the mansion for months, maybe even years, dragging the legal battle out while bleeding the trust dry with lawyer fees. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I picked up my phone and dialed the one man who had anticipated this exact scenario. "Mr. Sterling," I said when the lawyer answered. "My father just served me." I heard a low chuckle on the other end of the line. I was wondering how long it would take Richard to make a fool of himself. "Do not worry, Elena. I have already received a copy of the filing. We have a preliminary hearing scheduled for Thursday morning in front of Judge Harper. Is there a chance my father could win this?" I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. "Elena," Mr. Sterling said smoothly, "your grandfather was a brilliant chess player. He didn't just teach you how to play the game. He left us the perfect checkmate. Wear a nice suit on Thursday. It's going to be a very entertaining morning." Thursday arrived with a heavy, gray, overcast sky. I walked into the massive, marble-floored courthouse downtown, wearing a sharp, charcoal gray blazer. Mr. Sterling was already waiting for me outside courtroom 4B, holding his signature black briefcase. When we pushed open the heavy wooden doors and walked into the courtroom, my family was already seated at the plaintiff's table. My father looked surprisingly confident. He was wearing a freshly pressed navy suit, his chin held high. He had hired a sleazy-looking, aggressive trial lawyer who was whispering in his ear. My mother and Sophia were sitting in the gallery right behind him, glaring daggers at the back of my head. They honestly thought they had found a loophole. They thought they were going to win. The bailiff announced the judge, and we all stood. Judge Harper, a stern, no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, took her seat at the bench and immediately slammed her gavel. "I have reviewed the preliminary filings for this case," Judge Harper said, looking down at my father's lawyer. "Counselor, your client is making some very severe allegations against Miss Wright. You are claiming that the deceased, William Wright, was suffering from severe cognitive decline and was manipulated into signing the final version of this trust. Do you have any actual evidence to support this claim, or are you just wasting my court's time?" My father's lawyer stood up, puffing out his chest. "Your Honor, we have medical records showing that William Wright suffered a minor stroke 2 years prior to his death. We argue that this event impaired his judgment. Furthermore, it is highly suspicious that a man would completely disinherit his only son and his beloved wife in favor of an estranged granddaughter who had been living out of the country for 5 years." My father nodded in agreement, looking extremely pleased with himself. Judge Harper turned her sharp gaze to Mr. Sterling. "Counselor, how does the defense respond?" Mr. Sterling stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket with a calm, theatrical grace. "Your Honor," Mr. Sterling said, his voice echoing clearly across the silent courtroom. "The plaintiff's claims are not only entirely baseless, they are an insult to the memory of a brilliant man. William Wright was in perfect cognitive health until the day his heart stopped, and he anticipated that his son, Richard, would attempt a shameless stunt exactly like this." My father's confident smirk faltered slightly. "To prevent any doubt regarding his mental capacity or his true intentions," Mr. Sterling continued, reaching into his briefcase, "William Wright requested that I physically record the final signing of his will and his statement of intent." Mr. Sterling pulled out a small, silver USB flash drive and held it up. The color instantly drained from my father's face. My mother let out a small, terrified gasp from the gallery. "With the court's permission," Mr. Sterling said, "I would like to submit this video into evidence and play it for the record." Judge Harper looked highly intrigued. Permission granted. Bailiff set up the monitor. A large TV screen was rolled to the center of the courtroom. The bailiff plugged in the USB drive, and the screen flickered to life. There he was, my grandfather. Seeing his face on the screen made a sharp, painful lump form in my throat. He was sitting in his large leather armchair in Mr. Sterling's office. He looked slightly older, slightly more tired, but his eyes were as sharp, fierce, and intelligent as ever. He looked directly into the camera lens, and when he spoke, his voice commanded absolute silence in the courtroom. "My name is William Wright," my grandfather said firmly. "I am of sound mind and body. I am recording this statement to serve as the final, indisputable declaration of my will and testament." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I am leaving my entire estate and the full control of my trust to my eldest granddaughter, Elena Wright. She is the only person in my bloodline who understands the value of hard work, integrity, and honor." My grandfather leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. The warmth in his voice completely vanished, replaced by a cold, furious disappointment. "I am explicitly disinheriting my son, Richard Bennett. Richard is a lazy, arrogant fool who has squandered every opportunity I ever gave him. He is a parasite who has lived off my success while treating his own eldest daughter like a stranger in her own home. If Richard is watching this video in a courtroom, it means he is trying to steal what does not belong to him. Do not let him." My father physically shrank in his chair. He buried his face in his hands, completely humiliated. My grandfather's final words echoed through the room. "Elena, I am so incredibly proud of you. Do not let these people drag you down. Cut the dead weight from your life and fly." The screen went black. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Judge Harper stared at my father with absolute, undisguised disgust. She didn't even need to consult her notes. She picked up her heavy wooden gavel and slammed it down with a crack that sounded like a gunshot. "Case dismissed with prejudice," Judge Harper declared loudly. "The injunction is denied. The eviction stands. And Mr. Bennett, I suggest you pack your bags quickly, because if I see your name on my docket again, I will personally hold you in contempt of court." We had won. But as I watched my parents and Sophia sitting there, utterly destroyed and publicly humiliated, I realized the hardest part wasn't the legal battle. The hardest part was going to be the final goodbye. The sharp crack of Judge Harper's gavel was the sound of a guillotine dropping on the Bennett family's privileged existence. As I walked out of the heavy wooden doors of the courtroom, I didn't feel the need to look back. I didn't need to see my father trembling in his chair or hear my mother's pathetic sobbing. The legal battle was over. The absolute finality of my grandfather's words had sealed their fate. They were no longer just morally bankrupt. They were legally, financially, and publicly ruined. I took the elevator down to the lobby, stepped out into the crisp Boston air, and took a deep breath. For the first time in 5 years, the air tasted clean. But true to form, my family's delusion was a tough disease to cure. Even when their ship was completely underwater, they still tried to act like they were sailing in first class. It was Friday night, 2 days after the court hearing. In exactly 48 hours, the eviction notice would expire, and they would be legally forced out of the mansion. I was sitting in my apartment, reviewing some project files for my job in Japan, when my phone chimed with a notification from Instagram. I hadn't blocked Sophia on social media. I kept her unmuted purely for the psychological study of watching a narcissist unravel. I clicked on the notification. Sophia had just posted a new story. She was standing in the lavishly decorated ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton downtown. She was wearing a stunning, floor-length emerald green gown. She had a glass of champagne in one hand, smiling brightly for the camera alongside 3 other girls from her high society friend group. The caption read, "Supporting a great cause tonight. #charity gala #blessed billionaire mindset." I stared at the screen, genuinely dumbfounded. They were 2 days away from being homeless. Their cars had been repossessed. Their credit cards were maxed out. And yet, here was Sophia, attending one of the most expensive, exclusive charity galas in the city, pretending everything was perfectly fine. I knew exactly what she was doing. In her twisted mind, if she could just maintain the appearance of wealth, she could somehow manifest it back into reality. She was probably telling her friends that our grandfather had left her millions, lying through her teeth to keep her social standing intact. I closed my laptop. I wasn't going to let her continue the lie. If she wanted to play pretend in front of the city's elite, I was going to give her a reality check she would never forget. I went to my closet and pulled out a sleek, minimalist black evening gown. I threw on some light makeup, grabbed a small clutch, and called an Uber. The Ritz-Carlton ballroom was packed with Boston's wealthiest socialites. Politicians, business moguls, and trust fund kids were mingling under the crystal chandeliers. Because I was dressed the part, and I casually mentioned the name of a wealthy investor I knew from my old job, the host at the door didn't even check the guest list. I slipped right in. It took me less than 5 minutes to spot her. Sophia was standing near the center of the room, holding court with a group of wealthy young women. She was laughing loudly, tossing her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. I quietly moved closer, standing just behind a marble pillar where I could hear their conversation perfectly. "Oh, it's been incredibly stressful." Sophia was sighing dramatically, playing the part of the grieving heiress. But Grandpa William was so generous. "The lawyers are still finalizing the paperwork, but I should have access to my portion of the $12 million trust by next week. I'm thinking about buying a summer house in the Hamptons." Her friends cooed in sympathy and awe. "That's amazing, Sophia. You totally deserve it." I stepped out from behind the pillar. "A summer house in the Hamptons?" I said, my voice cutting through their conversation like a blade. "That's fascinating, Sophia. How are you going to pay for it? With the lease payment you bounced on your Range Rover?" Sophia froze. The color instantly drained from her face, leaving her looking sickly pale against the bright emerald green of her gown. Her friends turned and looked at me, confused. Who are you?" one of the girls asked, looking me up and down. "I'm her older sister," I said, offering a polite, chilling smile. "The one our grandfather actually left the $12 million to." Sophia's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. "Elena, what? What are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice shaking violently. "I'm just enjoying the gala," I replied smoothly. "But I have to admit, I'm a little confused. I thought the bank seized all your credit cards after the repossession truck towed your car away on Monday. How did you afford the $5,000 ticket for this charity event?" The girls standing around Sophia gasped. They took an immediate, instinctual step away from her, as if poverty was a contagious disease. "Sophia?" one of the girls asked, her tone suddenly sharp and judgmental. "Is she telling the truth? Was your car repossessed?" "No, she's lying!" Sophia shrieked, her voice cracking in panic. She pointed a shaking finger at me. "She's insane. She's just jealous because Grandpa loved me more." "Really?" I said calmly. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my phone. "Because I have the court documents from Thursday right here. The ones where Judge Harper legally dismissed your father's pathetic attempt to steal my inheritance. And the eviction notice that states you have exactly 48 hours to vacate my property before the sheriff throws your belongings onto the street." I held the phone up so her friends could see the bold legal text. The reaction was instantaneous. The socialites looked at Sophia with absolute, unmasked disgust. In their world, losing your money was a tragedy, but lying about it and pretending to still be one of them? That was an unforgivable sin. "You're being evicted?" The girl nearest to Sophia sneered, her nose wrinkling. "Oh my God, are you wearing a rented dress right now?" "No, please, you have to listen to me," Sophia begged, tears of absolute humiliation welling up in her eyes. "She stole it from us. She's trying to ruin my life." But they weren't listening anymore. The girls turned their backs on her and quickly walked away, whispering furiously to each other. By tomorrow morning, the entire country club circuit would know that the Bennett family was entirely bankrupt. Sophia stood there, completely alone in the middle of the crowded ballroom. The fake, glittering armor she had worn her entire life was shattered into a million irreparable pieces. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a pure, venomous hatred. "I hate you," she hissed, her voice trembling. "I will hate you for the rest of my life." I looked at my little sister. I didn't feel angry. I didn't even feel triumphant. I just felt an overwhelming sense of pity. "You don't hate me, Sophia," I said quietly. "You hate the fact that without my grandfather's money, you are absolutely nothing." I turned my back on her and walked away. I didn't stay for the rest of the gala. I didn't need to. The illusion was dead. The Bennett family's social execution was complete. But as I stepped out of the hotel and hailed a cab back to my apartment, I knew the hardest day was still ahead of us. Sunday morning, 8 a.m. The deadline. I had to go back to that house one final time to watch the sheriff remove them from the property and to close the door on my past forever. Sunday morning arrived with a bitter, biting cold that seemed to sink straight into the bone. The sky over Boston was a heavy, bruised gray, threatening snow. It was a fitting backdrop for the end of an era. It was 7:30 a.m., exactly 30 minutes until the eviction notice expired. I parked my rental car across the street from the massive suburban mansion I had once been forced to call home. I sat in the driver's seat, the heater running low, watching the house. I expected to see a moving truck. I expected to see my parents frantically carrying boxes out to the curb, trying to salvage whatever dignity they had left before the authorities arrived. But there was nothing. The driveway was empty. The curtains were drawn tight. The house looked completely dead. They were in denial. Even after the bank had frozen their accounts, even after the tow truck had taken Sophia's car, even after the public humiliation at the charity gala, they still genuinely believed that I wouldn't go through with it. They thought they could just hide inside the house, ignore the warnings, and I would eventually back down out of familial guilt. They were wrong. At exactly 7:55 a.m., two marked Boston County Sheriff's cruisers turned onto the quiet suburban street and pulled directly into the driveway. I turned off my car engine, zipped up my heavy wool coat, and stepped out into the freezing air. 3 uniformed sheriff's deputies got out of their cruisers. The lead deputy, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern face, looked at his clipboard and then looked at me as I approached. "Elena Wright?" he asked. "Yes, officer," I replied, my voice steady. "We have the court-ordered writ of possession," he said, tapping his clipboard. "Are the occupants still inside the premises?" "I believe so," I said, looking up at the massive front doors. "They haven't moved a single box." The deputy sighed, a sound that suggested he had dealt with entitled, delusional homeowners many times before. "All right, Miss Wright. Please stand back near your vehicle. We will handle the removal." The 3 deputies walked up the stone steps to the front porch. The lead deputy didn't bother ringing the doorbell. He raised his heavy, gloved fist and pounded violently on the heavy oak door. The sound echoed loudly down the quiet street. "Sheriff's Department!" he yelled. "Open the door!" For a long moment, there was no answer. He pounded again, harder this time. "Open the door, or we will breach the lock. You have a court-ordered mandate to vacate the premises." Finally, I heard the deadbolt click. The door slowly swung open. My father stood in the doorway. He was wearing his silk pajamas and a plush robe. He looked absolutely exhausted, but he still tried to puff out his chest and project authority. "What is the meaning of this?" my father demanded, trying to sound outraged. "Do you have any idea what time it is? You are disturbing my family?" "Richard Bennett?" the deputy asked, completely unbothered by my father's tone. "Yes, that's me, and I demand to know. Mr. Bennett, you were served a 30-day notice of eviction, which expired at 8 o'clock this morning." The deputy interrupted sharply, stepping forward and forcing my father to take a step back into the foyer. You are now trespassing on private property. You and your family have exactly 10 minutes to gather your immediate personal belongings and exit the house, or you will be placed under arrest." "You can't do this!" my mother screamed, running down the grand staircase. She was clutching a silk dressing gown around her waist, her face pale with panic. "This is our home! We have lived here for 20 years! You can't just throw us out into the cold." "Ma'am, 10 minutes, the deputy repeated, his voice cold and authoritative. "I suggest you start packing a bag." Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes wide with sheer terror. The reality had finally broken through her delusion. This wasn't a nightmare she could wake up from. This was actually happening. "Dad, do something!" Sophia shrieked, bursting into hysterical tears. "Don't let them take the house." My father looked at the armed deputies, then looked past them, out the open front door, and saw me standing at the end of the driveway. His eyes locked onto mine. There was no anger left in his gaze. There was only absolute, crushing defeat. The arrogant king of the castle was finally looking at the executioner. "Elena," my father choked out, his voice trembling. "Please, I'm begging you, just give us one more week. Just let us figure something out." I stood perfectly still, my hands deep in my coat pockets. "Your week expired 5 years ago, Dad," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the crisp winter air. "When you told me I didn't belong in this family." The lead deputy turned to his partners. "Go upstairs. Make sure they pack quickly and don't take any fixtures or assets that belong to the property." The next 10 minutes were a chaotic, pathetic blur of wailing and frantic scrambling. My mother and Sophia ran wildly through the house, violently stuffing whatever expensive jewelry, designer clothes, and cash they could find into trash bags and suitcases. They were crying so hard they could barely breathe. My father just stood in the foyer, staring blankly at the wall, completely broken. At 8:12 a.m., the deputies physically escorted them out the front door. My mother was dragging 2 heavy suitcases, her face stained with black mascara. Sophia was clutching a garbage bag full of expensive shoes to her chest, sobbing uncontrollably. My father walked out last, his shoulders slumped, holding nothing but a small duffel bag. They stood on the frozen sidewalk, shivering in the biting wind. They had no cars. They had nowhere to go. They were completely and utterly homeless. One of the deputies changed the locks on the front door, placed a heavy chain across the handles, and handed me the new set of keys. "The property is secure, Miss Wright," the deputy said. "If they attempt to re-enter, call 911 immediately." "Thank you, officer," I said quietly. The deputies got back into their cruisers and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway with my family. The silence between us was heavier than the winter air. My mother looked at me, her eyes filled with a desperate, pathetic hope. She took a step toward me, reaching her trembling hand out. "Elena," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, we have no money for a hotel. It's freezing out here. Just let us stay in the guest house or the basement. Please, we're your parents." I looked at the woman who had birthed me. I looked at the father who had enabled my abuse. I looked at the sister who had stolen my fiancé. "There is a homeless shelter 3 miles down the highway," I said, my voice completely devoid of any emotion. "I suggest you start walking before it starts to snow." I turned my back on them, walked over to my rental car, and opened the door. "You're a monster!" Sophia suddenly screamed, her voice shrill and echoing down the quiet street. "You're a sick, twisted monster. I hope you rot in hell, Elena. I hope you die alone." I paused, with my hand on the car door. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to see her face to know that she had lost completely. "I already died alone, Sophia," I said quietly into the freezing wind. "You're just looking at the ghost." I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. I looked in my rearview mirror one last time. I saw the 3 of them standing on the sidewalk, shivering, surrounded by garbage bags, staring at the massive, empty mansion that they would never step foot inside again. The nightmare I had promised them was finally complete. but as I drove back toward the city, I knew there was one final loose end I needed to tie up. One last piece of my grandfather's plan that needed to be fulfilled before I could finally walk away forever. The winter passed, giving way to a crisp, bright spring. 3 months had gone by since the morning I stood in the freezing cold and watched my family get escorted out of their mansion. 3 months since the Bennett family's perfect suburban lie was finally buried. I didn't keep the mansion. The thought of living inside those walls, surrounded by the ghosts of my miserable childhood, made me feel suffocated. Instead, I instructed Mr. Sterling to put the property on the market. It sold within 2 weeks to a lovely, quiet couple with 3 young children. The massive sum from the sale was deposited back into my grandfather's trust. I was sitting in Mr. Sterling's downtown office on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, signing the final pages of the estate closure documents. "Everything is officially settled, Elena," Mr. Sterling said, looking at me with a warm, grandfatherly smile. "The $12 million, the liquid assets, the property dividends, it is all securely locked in your personal accounts. You are entirely financially independent. William would be incredibly proud of the woman you've become." "Thank you, Mr. Sterling," I said softly, setting the silver pen down. "For everything. For executing his plan exactly the way he wanted. It was an honor," he nodded. He paused for a moment, adjusting his glasses. "Before you go, there is one final matter. I have been receiving persistent calls from a public defender representing your former fiancé, Daniel Cooper. The name barely registered an emotional response from me anymore. What does he want?" "Mr. Cooper was officially indicted on federal fraud and embezzlement charges last month," Mr. Sterling explained, pulling a thin file from his desk. "Because his assets were seized and his accounts were frozen, he couldn't afford private counsel. He is currently being held in a county jail awaiting trial. His public defender reached out to ask if you, as the sole heir of the Bennett estate, would be willing to provide a character reference or a financial settlement to help him secure a plea deal." I stared at Mr. Sterling for a long moment. A small, dry laugh escaped my lips. Even from behind bars, Daniel Cooper was still trying to find a woman to leech off of. He actually thought, after destroying my wedding, stealing my life savings, and sleeping with my sister, that I would open my checkbook to save him from federal prison. "Tell his public defender," I said, my voice completely calm, "that I do not know a man named Daniel Cooper. And if they contact this firm again, I will file a harassment suit." Mr. Sterling smiled, a sharp, satisfied gleam in his eyes. "Consider it done." I left the law office and stepped out onto the bustling streets of Boston. The sun was shining brightly, reflecting off the tall glass skyscrapers. The air felt incredibly light. I had won. I had all the money, all the power, and my complete freedom. And yet, I knew that true closure didn't come from a bank balance. It came from knowing that I no longer needed to look back. I had kept tabs on my family through a private investigator, just to ensure they never tried to find out where I lived. The update I received last week was the final chapter of their story. My parents, Richard and Linda Bennett, had moved into a cramped, one-bedroom rental apartment in a rundown, high-crime neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. My father, the man who used to mock people who worked blue-collar jobs, was now working the graveyard shift as a security guard at a local warehouse just to pay for groceries. My mother, the woman who couldn't survive without country club luncheons, spent her days sitting in a tiny, dark living room, completely isolated from her former wealthy friends who had abandoned her the second she lost her money. And Sophia? After she realized that Daniel was going to federal prison and all his money was gone, she immediately filed for divorce. But a divorce couldn't save her from the mountain of high-interest credit card debt she had accumulated in her own name. The private investigator sent me a photograph. It was taken inside a cheap, greasy diner near the interstate highway. In the photo, a girl was wiping down a sticky table, wearing a cheap polyester uniform and a stained apron. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she looked exhausted, defeated, and utterly miserable. It was Sophia, the golden child, the girl who stole my wedding ring, now scrubbing dirty coffee mugs just to survive. They got exactly what they deserved. The universe had balanced the scales. A few days later, I packed my bags and flew back to my home in Japan. I didn't return to the small, entry-level IT job I had left behind. With my grandfather's trust fund, I had the capital to start my own tech consulting firm in Tokyo. I built a beautiful, quiet life for myself. I surrounded myself with people who valued honesty, hard work, and genuine kindness. One evening, about a year later, I was sitting on the balcony of my high-rise apartment in Tokyo. The city lights glowed like a sea of stars below me. I was holding a glass of warm tea, feeling the cool evening breeze against my face. My phone buzzed on the small patio table. It was an email notification. I glanced at the screen. The sender's name was blocked, but the subject line read, "Elena, please, it's Mom." I didn't open the email. I didn't feel the sudden, frantic urge to read her desperate apologies or her pathetic begging. I didn't feel the need to respond with a witty, crushing insult to remind her of her failures. I felt absolutely nothing. I picked up my phone, swiped left on the notification, and hit delete. Then, I went into my settings and permanently blocked the IP address. People often say that the best revenge is success. They say that revenge is about destroying the people who hurt you, making them bleed, making them suffer the way you suffered. But as I sat there, looking out over the beautiful, glowing city that I had made my home, I realized that those people are wrong. Destroying someone doesn't heal you. It just ties you to them forever. You spend your life looking backward, obsessed with their misery, letting their darkness consume your light. True revenge isn't about making them cry. True revenge is reaching a point in your life where you realize you simply don't care if they exist anymore. It is the moment you stop looking backward and you finally turn your face toward the sun. I am Elena Wright. 5 years ago, I was a broken, rejected girl, thrown out of a graveyard by the people who were supposed to love me. Today, I am whole. I am free. And I am entirely, unapologetically happy. Screen slowly fades to black. A powerful, inspiring, and cinematic ending music starts playing. Revenge didn't heal me. Walking away did. If you enjoyed my story, if you believe that the truth always comes to light and that no one can steal your destiny, please take a second to hit that subscribe button. It means the world to me. Maybe very soon, I'll be back with another story to share. Until then, protect your peace. Take care of yourself. And remember, never let anyone convince you that you are worth less than you are. Goodbye.